This post has been shared close to 6,000 times. It shows a picture of the boy and a short blurb about him. Some commenters say they find this inappropriate and think it will be harmful for the child. But others say this could be exactly what he needs to get a home for Christmas. Aiden loves video games, the outdoors, and sports, especially basketball. This is the post touching thousands of people as DCS tries to find a foster home for Aiden.
These kids have experienced so much trauma, and we need to make sure that we're not adding to that trauma.
State Representative Gloria Johnson is advocating for changes at DCS. She says she's conflicted by this post.
And my first gut impression was this is a little creepy, and I understand the intent, and I understand what they're trying to do here. But is this the best way to go about it?
Hundreds of commenters are also weighing in. Some agree with this approach, sending prayers and well wishes for Aiden to find a home. Others say they feel like this is exploiting the boy and liken it to animal shelters trying to adopt out pets. Johnson says this post should spark a review of DCS social media policies.
Hopefully it will start a conversation on the best way to go about this without feeling like it might be exploiting a child.
I emailed a DCS spokesperson with a link to the post asking why they made it and their response to the concerns. I'm waiting to hear back. The controversy comes as DCS is under fire for children sleeping on office floors and as they struggle to fill vacant caseworker positions. The DCS commissioner said in a recent hearing they're in need of about 1,000 new foster families to house Tennessee's most vulnerable children. And they say teenagers are the hardest children to find placements for. Now, multiple commenters said they are interested in fostering or adopting Aiden.
And these kids have nowhere else to turn. DCS Commissioner Margie Quinn says some end up in offices or even hospitals for 100 days at a time.
They're staying 100 days in hospitals. And they're not acutely ill, but they can't stay in an office.
Last week, Commissioner Quinn asked for $156 million in state and federal funding. Now, this would in part go towards a first-of-its-kind treatment center in Tennessee, providing housing for those with mental health issues or behavioral needs. But State Senator Heidi Campbell says time is not on their side, writing this letter to Governor Bill Lee alongside State Representative Gloria Johnson. All this to speed up DCS reform.
We had money for a $500 million football stadium. And we had $1.5 billion in the rainy day fund. And now we've got $10 billion in surplus. And they're telling us we don't have enough money. It's about priorities.
If there was ever a rainy day, it's when our children are sleeping on office floors, ending up in hospitals and dying.
The two are calling on an emergency session as the funding DCS is asking for is not until next fiscal year, forcing these kids to wait until next July.
If the governor had fixed this early when we first started talking about it, we wouldn't be here.
Today, we asked what his short-term plans are, and we received a statement that says, in part, Tennessee Department of Children's Services has been most impacted by workforce challenges, which the department has addressed through consistent pay raises for caseworkers and will continue to prioritize in the upcoming budget.
The Beacon Center lists those pods as one of the biggest wastes of money in its annual pork report. Now, Metro says the pods were bought with state money for pandemic isolation. But the Beacon Center points out the city never even asked the state if they can use those pods for homelessness. While Nashville's homeless problem took over parks, the Beacon Center says city leaders ignored a partial solution in the form of those pods. Beacon calls it a $1.2 million waste.
But there's still over 100 in storage, and we have no explanation to why they're not being used. And you can argue about, whether this was a good expense or a bad expense. But the fact is, we already spent that $1.2 million on these pods. At least use them for homeless people who need, shelters.
Fox 17 News has been back and forth with Metro's Office of Emergency Management and the Health Department over the pods. Each points the finger at the other as to who controls the pods. A few of the pods placed at the Nashville Rescue Mission in case they were needed for COVID isolation have since removed.
Because right now, they're sitting in a warehouse somewhere. So let's not act like, this is all for COVID, because the fact is that This is just making more excuses instead of actually trying to solve, some of the homelessness problem in this park.
I reached out to the mayor's office because ultimately the buck stops there. I asked if the city asked the state for the okay to use the pods for the homelessness. I'm still waiting for an answer. Metro Councilwoman Erin Evans says the city keeping the pods in storage is clearly the wrong thing to do.
The biggest nonprofit shelter, the Rescue Mission, is stretched very, very thin. And so is there opportunity to use them someplace else? And so I think asking that question on the council end and seeing what the current response is, it's something that we should be doing.